Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. You with us, Rico? You frozen still? He's frozen? Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. I guess Rico is frozen. He is getting shot up right now by the internet police, or something is going on right now. Thank you all for getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday here on YouTube and audio only on Clubhouse. And today is National Crawfish Day, National Haiku Poetry Day, National Cheese Ball Day, especially, I guess, for all of the cheese balls and the cheese heads in Wisconsin, maybe. National Bat Appreciation Day. Not sure if they're talking about baseball bats, bats that fly, or the bats that get you high. And it's also National Ellis Island Family History Day today. Oh, boy, that sounds interesting. I'm surprised that hasn't triggered Rico yet. But nonetheless, oh, man, what is going on today? Rico, are you with us? We can't hear you. You're on mute. Rico. Well, I guess I'm just going to go into my story then, since Rico is totally inoperable today. Don't know what's going on Rico's side, but Rico, we cannot hear you. I do see your lips moving, but nonetheless, we're going to keep it moving because it's Monday and we got a lot of shit to cover today.
Here's an intro for you. The leader of this 5-ring circus of cannabis and psychedelic news, holding it down at Mar-a-Lago with his shiny new High at 9 News hat. It is Brother Jason Beck.
Yay! Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you so much for that introduction, Matthew St. Germain. Very, very much appreciated. That was pretty quick on the fly. And since you referenced Mar-a-Lago, I figure I might as well talk about Trump today. That's right, because there was a speech that was held on Friday, and it's got cannabis people a little bit up in arms, but I think once they hear what he really means, everything's going to be all right. Because everything Trump said about mass shootings in an NRA speech, former president and future president Donald Trump insisted that America's continuing epidemic of mass shootings is, in quotes, not a gun problem, while addressing the annual meeting of the National Rifle Association. Trump, speaking at the NRA meeting in Indianapolis, Indiana on Friday, argued without evidence that Democrats' mental health issues and transgender community and marijuana use were instead driving the rash of deadly mass shootings, while paying tribute to police and offering prayers to the families of the 3 children and 3 adults who were killed during a shooting at a Christian school in Nashville, Tennessee last month. Unquote. Our hearts were shattered by the news of the monstrous attack on a Christian elementary school in Nashville, Trump said. We wrap those beautiful families in our love and we lift them up in our prayers. We also salute the law enforcement heroes who ran into danger and took out the killer with speed and skill and made us all very, very proud. It's a scandal and a tragedy that year after year, Democrats in Washington continue to hold common sense school safety measures hostage to their radical gun control agenda, which in virtually all classes would do nothing to prevent attacks by demented and disturbed individuals, he added. The former president claimed that school shootings had never been talked about until around the year 2000. He said that firearms were not to blame for gun violence, arguing that the problem was instead social and spiritual. He says, our country has been chock full of guns for centuries, and there were no talk of massacres of school children until around the year 2000, Trump said. That's when it really started. They started talking about it. This is not a gun problem. This is a mental health problem. This is a social problem, and this is a cultural problem, and this is a spiritual problem. While the number of U.S. school shootings has been increasing in recent years, they're not a new phenomenon, with the first recorded incident occurring before the founding of the country in 1764. The bulk of the deadliest school shootings, however, have occurred in recent decades. Trump promised that he would roll back existing gun laws if elected to a non-consecutive second term in the White House, while working to arm teachers and install armed security guards at entrances of every school in America. And a quote, I will ask Congress to repeal totally ineffective legislation that makes it harder to protect our schools and easier for criminals to face absolutely no opposition when they go in, he said. For about $12 billion, we could fund armed security guards at the entrance of every school in America and also arm every willing teacher. The former president went on boldly suggest that transgender people were to blame for the mass shooting, saying he would quickly order the FDA to convene an independent outside panel to investigate whether transgender hormone treatments and ideology increase the risk of extreme depression, aggression, and violence. In a quote, I think most of us already know the answer, don't we? Trump added. And he says there is no evidence that transgender hormone treatments are responsible for mass shootings, and transgender people make up a very small percentage of the U.S. population and have committed a tiny fraction of mass shootings, the bulk of which were committed by cisgender men. Cisgender, I'm not sure what that actually means, but nonetheless, where's the part where he's talking about the GMO weed? I don't see that in here, but Trump basically says that he's blaming the same things that I've already mentioned on top of GMO enhanced weed, which to my response is there is no such thing as GMO enhanced weed, and he has to be talking, in my opinion, about eradicating Delta 8. That's my guess on this of what he's actually referring to, but I want to hear what you guys have to say about all of this. This is Jason Beck reporting for High at 9 News. Rico, are you with us?
Mind, body, and soul.
I can hear you now.
There he is.
Mind, body, soul, and spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Trump needs to smoke some weed.
Oh boy, that's it. That's all you got, huh?
So
it's your boy.
Out of 173 of the last attacks, 3 attackers were transgender, and the attackers that were transgender were female to male, which means that they were, regardless of other psych medications, they were on testosterone, which is the primary indicator in mass shootings and actually probably 99% of violence perpetrated from human to human. The other thing we really should be talking about is SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors like Prozac and all those others. And their clear side effect of suicidal and homicidal ideation. And when we don't see that these people are disaffected, they're desocialized because they're sitting in their rooms on the computers. There's not the school programs. There's not the after school programs there used to be. There's not these occasions and abilities for socialization. You get these people that are disaffected, have suicidal and homicidal ideation, and then they can go buy a machine gun with a 40-round clip. And then the story kind of writes itself to everyone's detriment at that point. But I think it's not just guns. I'm a gun owner and I'm a gun advocate. I believe in people's right to own guns. But at the same time, I think that we really need to begin addressing the mental health crisis in America. And we really should talk about the Republicans and their deification of Ronald Reagan and how Ronald Reagan started in California by closing mental health facilities for people who were deemed to not be a direct harm to themselves. And he took all that money and put it into prisons. He took the money from healthcare and education and put it into prisons. And they got elected as president. He did the same thing nationwide. And now when you see mass homelessness, mass shootings, the amount of violence and insanity we have, our prisons are overcrowded because of mandatory minimums. All of this stuff was Ronald Reagan. And I don't know if anybody else has an opinion on this. But
I'm gonna jump in. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm not gonna just sit here and blame Ronald Reagan. I think, like, the issues, like, let's take one segment, one cross section of that populace, right? And I know we talk about it a lot here, so I'm going to talk about it. The veterans. We have a lot of homeless veterans out there. So the VA, they get funding obviously through tax dollars from our government, and they don't have a plan to address this. I think the problem mostly is that there's no plan to deal with it. It's like we are just like, hey, we'll give them whatever we can to like, so they have a little tiny sliver of dignity, these people. But it's like, dude, you're going extra crazy because no one's trying to really like get in there and do something valuable to like help the situation. Just putting a band-aid on the situation with like, I'm just taking one cross segment here. It's just too big of a problem to talk about. But just like the homelessness issues, and then the homelessness, extends into the, residential areas where, there's conflict. There's bound to be. So it's like, look, if we're real serious about creating like, an environment where we don't have this happening, it's not just like gun control or this. It's like a whole revamping of the way we look at our issues, our social issues as a society. And maybe there's a solution in there somewhere, but it's got to start with like actual, dollars being spent with a plan. And I think there's nobody can really agree on a plan. I think we had in LA, for instance, we had a mayoral race recently, and there were polar opposites. As the campaigns are going, we see like one group wants to really dismantle and has a plan that they think is effective, and the other side of the coin, they want to perpetuate the issue a little more, and they want to like try to create more groups and more subsidization to help the issue. But I don't know what the answer is. All I know is that it's an increasing problem.
I think America does not want to address the issue. Nobody does, because if they did, I mean, the data is right. The data is right in front of you. Like when are you going to do a mass analysis of white males in the nation, and how they are the biggest reason why any of this shit is going down?
But I don't know what that means though, Rico. White males, like, dude, like, listen, like
mass shootings. If you want to talk about
nearly 100% of mass shooters are white males.
Wait, mass shooters. Okay, so people that go in and take guns. But what about all of the other gun violence in America? Are we just going to segment white men and say white men that are?
We're talking about mass shooting, though, Simone.
I think we're talking about gun violence. I think we're talking about gun violence.
No, we're not. We're actually
we're talking about mass shooters. And what Trump said about mass shooters.
Hold on, specifically. Slow down, Matthew. What we're really talking about is President Trump's comments in regards to mass shootings, and his comments in regards that he believes that they are caused by these mental illness claims, GMO weed, and transgenderism. That's what he was saying. And so I think that when he's saying GMO weed, I believe that he's talking about Delta 8 and not actually real weed, because there is no such thing as GMO.
I think he's just grasping for straws and trying to get in the headlines like he did with his Mexico client comment leading up to his his first presidency, I should say. He's trying to say something like really incendiary, something really offensive and polarizing, just grab headlines. But if anybody's really interested in trying to solve for the mass shooting problem, it's glaring right in front of you. Like, who is behind the majority of them? If you have like one black, one transgender, like one Native American, like whoever, we have to do a study into those people. What makes them tick? Why are you not doing that? Why are you not having that same energy for the majority of these mass shooters? Why? Because you're fucking cowards. Excuse me. I apologize for saying that.
Well, what I am going to say in regards to this, I am super excited that President Trump is calling for the eradication of booth and Delta 8, and we're going to go to a commercial. Run
Delta
the commercial.
8, it's more spice than Delta 8.
Oh boy, I saw what you did there.
You like that?
How's it going, guys? Saman Razani coming to you from Green Street here with Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast available on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Tune in now and check it out.
Yeah. Coming up next, it is the dope dad himself who finally was able to free himself from the cufflinks of the internet gangbangers that still prolong him and still follow him from house to house. It's kind of like Poltergeist, but it's the internet. That's right. It is the dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte.
It is almost always the person who is possessed and not the domicile, So definitely a lively conversation, Jason. Thank you for bringing that last one up. And, being from Virginia, being a gun owner, gun supporter myself, like, we don't have a lot of that. The mass shooting stuff, we had one recently, but it's definitely something we got to keep our beat on. And it's more spice. K2. So my story is coming out of the Hill. All right. So a new city earns its title for the nation's top city for weed. So what exactly goes into naming America's quote unquote top city for weed? If you are reading The Hill this morning or this weekend, you'd be inclined to take the news outlet's word at saying it's Portland, Oregon. The publication says Denver lost its place to the nation's marijuana mecca. That's what they called it. Taking cues from an analysis from Clever Real Estate, who has partnered with Leafly to create the rankings, taking into account the following metrics: legality, cannabis prescribing doctors per 100,000 residents, dispensaries per 100,000 residents, average rating of dispensaries out of 5 stars, obviously on Leafly, number of site visitors to Leafly, nothing fishy about that data point or leaning one way or another, price of 1 ounce of high quality weed, affordability of high quality weed, price of 1 ounce of medium quality weed, affordability of medium quality weed, number of head shops per 100,000 residents, Google Trend data for 12 common marijuana related search terms, number of Taco Bells. Yes, Taco Bells. Like, people still go to Taco Bell, but I guess they do in Portland. And concert venues per 100,000 residents, number of local hiking trails according to All Trails database. I would not be surprised if they're tied to Leafly somehow too. And finally, the public perception score. All that data was compiled to crown the new king of Kush as Portland, Oregon. Oregon was 2 years behind Colorado in legalizing recreational cannabis. Washington and Colorado legalized in 2012, while Alaska and Oregon were not far behind in 2014. The article does admit that the city took the top spot mainly because the prices are cheaper for consumers than other cities. High quality cannabis costs in Oregon $210 per ounce, as opposed to $242 in Denver, who was last year's champ crowned by The Hill and Leafly, and also more dispensaries per 100,000 residents at 13.7 to Denver's 11.5. According to the list, these in order are the top 15 cities for weed: Portland, Denver, Buffalo, New York, Seattle, Baltimore, Las Vegas, Sacramento, San Diego, Los Angeles. There we go. Is that like a 10? 9, 10 in there. San Francisco, Boston, San Jose, Phoenix, Detroit, and Hartford, Connecticut. So I guess I see the angle that they took here, but I think the article analysis title should be "Where Can Americans Score the Cheapest Weed per Pound?" And this whole list thing, I think it's just like too heavily compounded with Leafly. Maybe there's like a Leafly tied to The Hill going on here, but I don't know. What do y'all think about this list? And does your city make an appearance? And I know there's no way to get all the subjectivity out of any red meat topic like this one. It's in such an opinionated industry, but what criteria would you include if you were to make a list? I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad in the street. Just want to hear from you, Jason. Do you think that Portland, Oregon is the new mecca of marijuana, as The Hill quotes here?
Well, first of all, how they're going to call this the new mecca with only 4 licensed stores open is totally beyond me. But then again, I mean,
what is this list, dude? Why is it out on The Hill? What is going on here?
Mm-hmm. This is crazy that anyone would even think to publish a story written like this touting New York. I mean, unless you're including the trap market, which I'm sure could be one of the highest ranking cities for trapping in America.
And there's no hatred to Portland or to Buffalo or anything like that. I'm like, where are these cities coming from? Like, where is Leafly getting this data?
Well,
Bro,
first
you
of
ever
all,
smoked
I've
weed
never
in
known
Denver?
Leafly.
Where people go to Leafly?
I've never known as Leafly being a true proponent of truth in regards, because even if you remember when they first started coming out with all their strains and whatnot, their little fancy little cards, they had a number of them mislabeled as far as whether or not they were an indica or sativa or a hybrid, just for starters. And there was even a whole campaign on some strains for Leafly to change to make that correct. And so I don't trust anything that really Leafly puts out. I'm not.
Where would your top 5 cities be, Jason? Top 5. Go.
Top 5 cities for weed?
Yes, for weed.
You got Los Angeles. You got
Yeah.
Los Angeles. You got San Francisco. You
Yep.
got New York.
Okay.
Probably Miami, Florida, and then probably St. Louis, Missouri.
I could dig it.
Q, you can find me in St. Louis.
Mhm.
What about the rest of you guys? What do you got?
Jason, what do you, real quick, give me like a couple tidbits on what your criteria is, just off the top. I'm not gonna hold you.
What do you mean, my criteria?
Like, you came up with that real quick, right? Those 5 cities. So give me a couple.
Those would be the cities that people buy more weed in than any other city.
Okay.
Whether or not it's good weed, could definitely be bunk weed and could be boof weed.
Right.
But
Definitely
nonetheless,
weed.
that's where that's what I would say.
We have a comment right here in the chat. What do you classify as good weed?
What do I classify as good weed? Anything that I would deem myself able to actually smoke.
Anything Jason's smoking.
Yeah, well, the only time I smoke
Anything.
bad weed is when I have to judge things like the Emerald Cup, and there's some pretty terrible entries. But nonetheless, they only get breathed in for a half a second, and then it's all of a sudden my warning lights go off. I'm like, oh man, we got to put that out. I got to extinguish that booth. You are not a winner. And Matthew can sympathize with me in this because I mean he's had to deal with it also.
Yeah, and it's fun watching the new judges gain trust for because a lot of times we'll hit stuff and we'll go to put it down and a new judge will be like, no, let me try it. And we're like, dude, I am trying to save your life right now.
Yes.
And then people finally they start to get it, like, oh, okay, cool, yeah, I know, I trust you.
Yeah, here, try this. Here, go for it. Here, I think we should make a video of all of that, Matthew, with all the new judges. Like, here, you want to try this? And then we just hand them all the booth. You know what I'm saying?
Listen, I don't know what I don't know, but if Matthew St. Germain tells me not to do something, I'm not doing it.
Humble thanks.
I feel you.
I'd like to shout out two different spots in Portland, though. Portland does have amazing weed. They still have deli style. The quality is off the charts. It's really
that.
Well, I do because I go there all the time. I know people there. 2 cultivators specifically. Loud, LOWD stands for Love Our Weed Daily. Yeah, Jesse. I forget his last name, but veteran-owned, black-owned business, totally self-funded, super amazing. They have these smoke like a grower packs, and they have all the trimmers trimmed perfectly with the tips of the scissors, holding the weed by the built-in handle, the stem, and then they take and they put all of the trim buds from these packs into jars with chopsticks because they're really focused on providing the end-use consumer with the same experience that folks who grow weed and no growers like ourselves get, where things are just come out perfect. They're not stepped on. They're not harsh. They're not dry. And then the other standout is Archive Genetics. They have a dispensary. They're also one of the best seed breeders on the planet. They made the Moonbow. They made the Rainbow Belts. I could go on at length of stuff they've made. They're just outside of Portland, and they're also amazing. You can never go wrong. Loud doesn't have their own dispensary, but they're sold everywhere. Archive has their own dispensary and is sold around Portland. You'll total win with those strains. Jason, if you ever want to fly up to Portland and just smoke weed and ball out for a weekend, let me know.
Let me tell you something. If I go somewhere to smoke weed, fly out to smoke weed, I'm going to be smoking my own weed because I don't trust anybody's weed when I travel places. It's all
how's the Portland weed economy doing with the prices? Just
it's so bad up there, bro. It's not even funny. I feel bad if you haven't heard
much about it recently.
Small cultivators without huge overhead and quad A weed are surviving and thriving. Archive's doing great. Loud's doing great.
Yeah, big ups to Portland, man. Got some good people out there, and it's no hatred going out to them. I just this whole list. It's just the whole criteria just seems off. I have no idea why the Hill would pick this one up.
Well, maybe because they're not that high on the hill, Rico. Just saying.
I guess not.
Let's go to Matthew Rico.
Let's do it. He's an immortal cannabis wizard with a PhD in tripping balls, and he used that valuable Hogwarts liberal arts degree to vouch for a vetted entrance into cannabis, where he spent over 3 centuries in sales, marketing, cultivation, time travel, and you know what? Calling out your bullshit. Up next, y'all know who it is, Matthew St. Germain.
Thanks, Brother Rico. Happy Monday, everybody. I've got a story out of the Cleveland Plains dealer. An LSD to treat severe anxiety. A Cleveland clinic is at the forefront of psychedelic research. This clinic in Ohio is the only site participating in a national study looking at whether LSD administered in a controlled setting can help people with severe anxiety. This disorder, being anxiety, is a risk factor for suicide. If the results of the clinic's trial and others like it across the country are positive, LSD could be approved as a psychiatric treatment within the next 5 years. This was Dr. Brian Barnett. Sorry, I just hit my blunt like 4 times. I didn't know I was up next. He's running the clinic's LSD studies, co-director of the hospital. Now we're back on track. Psychedelics are the most powerful psychoactive drugs that we have, Barnett said. We believe that if LSD is used appropriately by trained personnel in a therapeutic setting, it can be extremely beneficial. Small doses of LSD loosen up the patient's consciousness and make them more readily able to discuss unconscious thoughts. Larger doses induce what's called a mystical experience, during which people feel connected with the universe and as if they have experienced the divine. LSD may be able to help the large numbers of American adults diagnosed with a mental health disorder, said MindMed CEO Robert Barrow. MindMed, which is sponsoring the study, the clinic and 19 other sites, investigates the therapeutic potential of psychedelic drugs for psychiatry, addiction, pain, and neurology. Psychedelic drugs have the unique ability to show clinical benefits quickly, while also maintaining those benefits for up to a year after only a few doses. In a field that has seen little meaningful innovation in decades, i.e. pharmacological mental health, this represents a potential revolution in the treatment landscape for the many patients suffering from conditions like generalized anxiety disorder. Discovered in 1943, LSD was the subject of numerous scientific studies into its psychiatric use during the 50s and 60s before it was made illegal. That history includes over 20 studies with anxiety, depression, and other neurotic illnesses with consistent, remarkable treatment responses, Barrow said. Fortunately, we've seen a resurgence of research with LSD and the psychedelic drug class over the past several years, and this modern research is confirming those earlier findings. There's really much we don't know. Research has been shut down for so long that we've had to start at the beginning, but there are a lot of positive signs from that research decades ago. Study participants currently taking medications such as antidepressants must be willing to taper off those medications after a few weeks as part of the trial. This allows researchers to evaluate the effectiveness of LSD without the assistance of other psychiatric medications. It's also important if you're doing psychedelics that you taper off on SSRIs, but they can block or negatively work with psychedelics, and they can either cause you to not get high or have problems. So that's a little safety tip from St. Germain. Very rarely, psychedelic drugs can unmask bipolar or schizophrenic behavior disorders in patients who have a family history of those disorders, but who have not yet had symptoms. People with family histories of bipolar disorder or schizophrenia are excluded from the study, Barnett said, and should think twice or talk to a therapist before getting high. After receiving LSD or placebo, study participants stayed there for 12 hours under observations. They have 9 visits total, 6 follow-up visits, and this is over a 12 to 17-week period throughout this study. Some LSD studies suggested that it helps patients with alcohol use disorder by helping them achieve a new self-image and willpower. Another study suggested that anxiety related to recent cancer diagnoses was decreased in patients treated with LSD. And because LSD is illegal, the clinic has to meet DEA regulations, and they say that DEA regulations have been making it very difficult to pull off these studies, especially because most colleges get federal funding, and then the DEA Schedule 1 will interfere with federal funding for drug research, which pushes most drug research forward. Barnett follows up by saying, I think this is a valuable opportunity for the scientific community in Cleveland and elsewhere to really catch up and participate in the psychedelic renaissance. I think there's going to be some significant opportunities to develop new treatments that could be potentially life-changing for patients. And I'd like to end with, again, saying I posted a couple studies in today's chat about suicidal and homicidal ideation with SSRIs. The biggest reason that our government, our Congress people are not talking about it is because they are directly funded by the companies that are pushing this on America. And if we look at psychedelics and therapy as a treatment for these problems, what happens is SSRIs make you blank. They treat bipolar and these other ups and downs that are kind of consistent with just being a human alive in a crazy world by blanking you out and turning you into a robot. Psychedelics deal with this same awesome and sometimes terrifying reality by allowing you to see that you're connected to a thing greater than yourself. You're part of a global community, and though it might be difficult, they give you inspiration to move forward with love together with the rest of your human family, right? And so I think a big key is attacking alienation through inclusion and connection. And I think psychedelics are a great way to do that. And again, the reason we're not hearing Congress people yelling about this on the floor of the Capitol is because they are in the pocket of the pharmaceutical industry. This is Matthew St. Germain with an informative and highly edited and political story for Monday. Thanks, guys.
Yo, respect for taking that one, dude. That's amazing.
So your background is what they are saying is going to help people with PTSD, is what you're telling me. Because it looks like one big sheet.
Really, yeah. And I was very lucky in that I probably had a much more minor amount of trauma than most people, but I started taking LSD at the Grateful Dead and immediately was like, well, I got to go do this at home. There's something bigger here. And I started doing it at home by myself and with just a very small amount of friends in the dark. And I was able to heal a lot of my own traumas and really just see who I was and what the real lay of the land is, man, because we're raised in this violent, egocentric, dominating culture where it's like, dude, I'm going to get mine by dominating everybody. And then what you do, what happens when you take psychedelics is you kind of zoom out and all of a sudden you see there's a greater organism here. And really it's not survival of the fittest through competition. It's survival of the fittest through cooperation.
Yeah. I mean, really it's like the key there, the core there is everyone's just trying to figure out who they are. Maybe some of them are being people they're not supposed to be, and everyone's hiding behind their fear and their ego. And that is letting you release all that. Now, we prescribe exactly what Matt's saying here, which is exactly right. We prescribe psychotropic drugs, SSRIs, to deal with these things in a lot of cases, instead of using other chemicals to do the same thing that don't have the effect. And the reason why no one's talking about this at the government level is because realistically, they actually tell you when you take the medicine, what the side effects are. And those things, between doctor, patient. So the government doesn't need to get involved. And yes, they are, being silenced because of all of the campaign funds and because this is all just a fucking giant cesspool. And that's why they're trying to keep us out and keep us silenced, because they see the real power. They know that we're making real medicine, but that's what they've done to tarnish the entire nutraceutical world, right? Yeah. They say the science, that's pseudoscience. They say it's not, you cannot quantify that beyond a reasonable doubt because it's not a pure, active pharmaceutical ingredient and API. So these things are all the bullshit, right? Because what's going to happen is when they legalize cannabis globally, federally, whatever, it's going to be the distillates. It's going to be those things that are going to be the acceptable active ingredient for the pharmaceutical companies to use in their product, because they know without a shadow of a doubt, this is 90+% the active drug that's gonna they're gonna use to inhibit whatever receptors in your body. So that's the oldest game in the book. So how are psychedelics going to change? It's the certification programs actually that are happening right now. And I'm unprepared for this, but I'll try to link the certification program right now. It's a national program headed by neuroscientists, doctors, PhDs, lots like the real people that are supposed to certify these types of groups and bodies that are going to be giving the treatments to people, right? And it's therapy based stuff. So it's that's really what it is more, there needs to be more inclusion for going to therapy to deal with your shit. And maybe you have the added benefit of going to a therapy session where they give you psychedelics, they give you MDMA, MDA, some other synthetic drug that was produced.
Blockers.
Yep. Same as, the pharmaceutical drugs. It's, these are the same, similar processes, but they're just different, compounds they're using as the precursors to those things. Now, I'm a total advocate for just, general mental health, but psychedelics, I think a lot of people would get a lot of benefit from. So respect Matt for telling the story.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on that, Simon.
Yeah, big love for this one. I think everything is
what he said. Oh, what he said.
I think everything is tied to the ego, man. So you need some more ego blockers, and we're gonna have better conversations, more muted tones with each other. And I think thank you for covering the story, number one. But I think there's more people need to open their minds, or at least try out psychedelics in their lives, and see how your conversations begin to change as well. Anxiety and all these other ailments, a lot of them are just tied to your ego. And when it comes to an inflated state, you need something to push that back down.
We got to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
Respect.
Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
Oh, yeah, everyone. We stopped our disclaimer, but we do want to remind everybody to make sure that you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, and make sure that you go over to our website, www.highat9news.com. Make sure that you check us out. Make sure you sign up for our newsletter as well as our 420 giveaway. Let us know what you're going to be doing this 420. We want to share how you'll be celebrating the high holiday this Thursday. And that's about right. On to the next commercial ad.
Keeping up to date on the evolving policies of relevant state, local, and federal governments is key to success. When the future of your business is at stake, you need representation as dedicated as you are. With a maze of laws and regulations surrounding cannabis, hemp, and psychedelics, knowing where to begin can be a challenge. Good thing the law offices of Omar Figueroa features a skilled, highly focused team ready to guide you through it all. They're accepting new clients in California and New York. So make sure you check them out at info@omarfigueroa.com.
Oh, coming up next, that's right, is Mr. Chris Eggers. It's the cop who traded his badge for a blunt and a notepad. That's right, trying to keep us all safe and also helping us know what real DEI is all about. That's right, it is the man, Mr. Christopher Eggers.
JB, everybody. My article comes out of the Orange County Register. I'm curious to see what my friends down in SoCal feel about this article. The headline reads, California is changing how it goes after illegal cannabis. Here's what California counties had the most illegal cannabis plants in 2022, and I'm going to get to that list. Fighting the illicit pot market. It's been 5 years since recreational cannabis sales began in California. Many have played by the rules, but the illegal growth and sale of the plant continue to undermine those obeying the laws, according to this article. Since the establishment in 1983, the Campaign Against Marijuana Planting, CAMP, has had more than 110 law enforcement agencies involved, making it one of the largest law enforcement task force in the U.S., but times are changing. California Attorney General Rob Bonta announced CAMP seized nearly 1 million illegally cultivated cannabis plants and more than 200,000 pounds of illegally processed cannabis. He also announced that the Department of Justice will be phasing out CAMP in favor of a year-round multi-agency program, eradication and prevention of illicit cannabis, EPIC. So what is EPIC? The EPIC program focuses on the investigation and prosecution of civil and criminal cases related to the illicit cannabis cultivation with a focus on environmental and economic harms and labor exploitation. Beginning in 2022, EPIC transitioned the Department of Justice 30-year seasonal eradication program into a year-round task force. EPIC is a multi-agency collaboration led by the DOJ in partnership with the U.S. Department of Agriculture's U.S. Forest Service, the Department of Interior's Bureau of Land Management and National Park Service, the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, the U.S. Department of Justice Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, California National Guard, the Central Valley High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Programs, California State Parks, and other local law enforcement departments. EPIC works in close coordination with DOJ's Cannabis Control Section. And recently, they were just given, I just lost in my article, a whole bunch of money, and I'll get to it, I'm sorry, but let me read down these counties. Plants seized by county in 2022. top 10 counties for plants eradicated. Mendocino, 18 sites, 190,000 plants. Riverside, 77 sites, almost 160,000 plants. San Bernardino, 41 sites. Lake County, 51 sites, all the way down to Shasta, 19 sites, 26,000 plants. Now, this article has some great graphics. It shows by county how many plants were seized, where the activity is in California, and where it's going. I thought this was really interesting. And then there's another graphic about California's divide. Prohibited. 56% of municipalities, cities, and counties prohibit all cannabis business types, and only 44% allow it. I hope we can share this this graphic on our sites. And then there's just a lot of good data, but it's all in graphic form. So I urge you to go click the link in our chats, check out this article, pull it up, and curious to see what you guys have to say about this. Very interesting. Camp no longer, Epic in play. Anybody have thoughts?
Same poop, different toilet.
Camp? Are you saying that camp has been eliminated, Chris?
They said that they're phasing it out in favor of Epic.
Well, and define Epic and explain that, please.
Yep. So Epic it's a program that focuses on the investigation and prosecution of civil and criminal cases related to illicit cannabis cultivation, with a focus on environmental and economic harms and labor exploitation.
Interesting.
Bless you.
It's an
Made
epic
up of
acronym.
a whole bunch of law enforcement agencies all across the board.
Yeah.
So now I wonder, because camp had jurisdiction in every single county in California except for the city and county of San Francisco. So do you know if Epic will have jurisdiction in the city and county of San Francisco as well?
Nothing in this article talks about San Francisco. That's very interesting.
And will they be making bus of epic proportion? I wonder.
Epic might be coming, absolutely.
I thought camp was epic.
Well, you thought
we all knew this was coming.
Nah,
but-
yeah.
Go ahead,
This is-
Simon.
This is like it's like the movie Casino, where you just move the guy to another thing and call him a different thing, but it's the same guy running the show.
The shell company.
The same assholes that are going to be running this program, and they're probably worse because they're going to, they actually have some funding. I know I recently saw something. I can't remember what site posted it, but there's lots of federal funding. There's a couple $100 million coming in for national interdiction of drugs and money, and that's kind of the word from Biden. The Biden camp is, get the drugs, get the money. So we're going to see a lot of BS happening, and I mean, we know what's going to happen. It's going to be I could see it playing out now. You're going to have big companies in California. They're going to have their product interdicted on the highways of Indiana somewhere, and we're going to have a big. It's going to be a big deal. So unfortunately, we're going to see it go. It's going to get worse before it gets better. So just keep your eyes open and keep your head on a swivel, people. Stay frosty out there.
Follow those grant dollars. Well said. You touched on it, but follow those grant dollars, because I think it's going to be important to see.
California got 160 million or something to do it. So
right.
Yeah, this 160 million dollars is coming for enforcement, people. It's going to pay for all the people that need to come check on your licenses or check on your farms that you say shut down. I mean, this is what happened in Colorado in the beginning. It was great. They didn't have any money to fight us, and then once they get the tax dollars rolling, then they could pay the investigators to come out and fuck you up. And excuse my language.
And this is just
and that
our tax dollars being spent so well, right?
That's right.
I for one would like to see any of this money that goes to eradicating cannabis grows on public land do so, please, because public land should be for everybody to enjoy. And
Respect.
One of the most shocking things for me in 2005 when I moved to Mendo from Los Angeles, because I wanted to get back to the land. I have family who's lived there since the Back to the Land movement in the 60s. Was, bro, you can't go anywhere. You can't go anywhere in the Mendo National Forest, really, except like the main campgrounds, for fear of literally running into dudes in cowboy boots with machine guns that will chase you. And it's horribly frightening. And so you go up to the woods to like go back to nature, and what you realize it's like an armed state. It's like an armed guerrilla state. And so that I support. The one thing that's a bummer is they're going to be busting lots of mom and pop growers in greenhouses with stuff right outside their backyard. And they're going to be pushing a lot more cannabis growing indoors, which stresses our electrical grid. So it's a tough issue.
They never use those helicopters and those cameras from helicopters to raid the Bohemian Grove. Just saying.
The Bohemian Grove.
If you know, you know. Northern California.
Oh God. Here we go. Here we go.
Jason.
All the craziness, crazy wackadoodles. Let's go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
Google it.
How's it going, guys? Saman Razani coming to you from Green Street here with Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast available on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify? Tune in now and check it out.
Coming to the stage next, he is a patient advocate, 15 industry vet, and award-winning salt extraction pioneer. And more important than all that, he's also another dope dad on the staff. Y'all know who it is, Saman Razani.
Thank you. All right, guys. Well, we have some more good news from some of our favorite companies. The most delicious ice cream. This one's coming from us from Benzinga. This 420, Ben & Jerry's urges Michigan's government Whitmer to grant clemency for cannabis convictions. And we love to hear that. Ben & Jerry's, a subsidiary of Unilever PLC, launched a campaign for 420 regarding what the company calls half-baked marijuana legislation, focusing on Michigan, where cannabis use is legalized, but many are still serving time for long-standing records of cannabis-related convictions. The Vermont ice cream maker is calling for clemency, which governors can bestow to either reduce a sentence or free an incarcerated person. Last year, governors in states like Oregon and Pennsylvania granted marijuana pardons and commutations, but there remains great opportunity for cannabis clemency in many states. For example, in 2021, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed legislation that streamlined removal of cannabis and other misdemeanors from public record, but excludes felony convictions for sentences of 10 years for 10 or more years. The Clean Slate Bill, as it's called, allowed Whitmer to grant clemency to Michael Thompson, who served 25 years for a cannabis conviction, the longest sentence for a nonviolent drug charge in the history of the state. We thank Governor Whitmer for having the courage to address the injustice in Michael Thompson's case, stated Chris Miller, head of global activism strategies at Ben & Jerry's. However, Michael is just one victim, and many in Michigan are still paying the price for the racist war on drugs and the criminalization of cannabis, which is why we're calling for Governor Whitmer to provide justice for all those still incarcerated for cannabis crimes. The company is asking their fans and citizens alike to contact Whitmer to urge her to grant clemency for the thousands of incarcerated and right the wrongs of injustice. The company's campaign has placed billboards adjacent to the Michigan State House in Lansing and mobile billboards across Ann Arbor and Lansing and is part of a larger national campaign calling for clemency in every state. Michigan is one of the number of states where this story is unfolding, and fans nationwide have the opportunity to use their voice and add their name to Ben & Jerry's list. And they have a template on their website, and I think we have a link to that. I don't know if that's working, but if you're interested in joining their list and adding your name to this, this campaign, go ahead and add your information and join, so we can get some justice for those that are still in prison serving time for the racist war on drugs. Thank you very much. That's Saman Razani reporting for High 9 News.
Yes, sir. I like this.
I mean, I love how Ben & Jerry's is trying to get on this bandwagon in New York.
It's no bandwagon, man.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It's not a bandwagon. Ben & Jerry's.
It's a bandwagon.
It's a bandwagon, bro. It's a bandwagon.
It's a bandwagon. It's like, you know, I mean, it's obvious. It's definitely like hip to snuggle up next to
doing this
cannabis felons and try to
they've been about that. They've been about that, man. If you look at Ben & Jerry's,
it's very duplicitous.
You know what, Ben & Jerry's, if they really want to do something, they should come out with like a cannabis felon flavor of ice cream, and all the proceeds from that flavor should go to criminal justice.
That's actually
pretty cool.
Genius. Yeah, no, that's genius,
Yeah.
Jason. What about that company that makes the bread and they only hire felons? That's like
No, I thought
that's-
we covered that story. I think that's exactly what they're doing. They have like a quote unquote non-profit cannabis focused flavor or something they're coming out. They have
they don't have none of that
brand
shit.
or something, and they said like everything is going to be donated from that. Any profit donated from that's going to.
But the real problem with that is who's going to pull the purse strings on all that money and where it's going.
You already know it's going to be exploited. Don't even go there. Let's just try to focus on the good right now.
I think they said it's going to LPP.
It's definitely not going to, PIMP. Put it in my pocket, as my friend.
I like that so much.
That's a Jason line. That's a Jason Beck-ism right there. So you can thank my man right here.
I generally don't defend corporations. Like Ben & Jerry's has a pretty decent track record when it comes to doing stuff like this. So gotta have their back just a little bit on this one.
Have their back.
What's that?
You have their back on this one?
I gotta have their back just a little bit, and they make some great non-lactose fucking.
I wonder how the cows feel
about it. Rico, you're just leaving us wide open, man. Me too, though. It's all good.
We got some great flavors when it comes to like non-lactose.
I'm glad they're doing it, but it's like, look, again, it's the duplicity that we all hate to see, and I know everyone's sick of it. So if we can just get real, they're Ben & Jerry's is owned by a very large, corporation, and we've all seen the movie WALL-E, and we know what's gonna happen when all the corporations just run shit. It's gonna just destroy our world. So it's gonna be a bunch of
WALL-E was your example for that?
WALL-E, bro. Have you not seen WALL-E? Come on, people.
Well,
Jason,
it is true.
You just got blazed.
Jason doesn't have kids, people. We already know.
I've seen WALL-E.
Word, Simon, word.
I have seen WALL-E, and I don't understand why you would even use that in the reference to this.
Dude, that is
exactly more like Terminator, bro.
You remember what WALL-E is about?
Unilever is like that shadow core.
WALL-E was trying to gain favor amongst humans.
Well, there's America where you can monopolize whatever you want, and it's all about corporations because they run the government. So everything
people too,
right?
Bing, bing, bing.
Yes,
right.
Everything that we touch, feel, I interact with it over the next 10 years is going to be corporation owned.
Yeah, and cannabis is no different.
In all fairness, corporations are people too.
And on that note,
I got binders full of women, and I wish they were all on our show today because we need some more estrogen. It seems like we're the black hat crew today, huh?
Yeah, I like
black
it.
hat.
We're rolling. Yes,
Boom.
That's right.
I couldn't find my height 9 hat.
Thanks for sending it, Jay.
Yes, no worries. Glad you guys all got those. All right, I'm gonna roll into my last story for you guys. All you guys have all gone, right? You guys have all delivered your stories. All right, so there's one more story I happened to find this morning. There's an oversupply in Pennsylvania, and marijuana store owners are not feeling the buzz. Medical cannabis users in Pennsylvania have been enjoying a 2-year high, with prices falling as much as 62%, but store owners are not feeling the buzz. Balance sheets are awash in red ink for multi-state operators that run dispensaries where cannabis products are sold, and the development of 2 big grow and processing facilities in the Pittsburgh area is up and in the air. Oversupply is part of the problem, said Stephen M. Sacharin, principal at Philadelphia-based Smart Counsel LLC and a cannabis industry veteran, so self-proclaimed. He says in a quote, "This is extremely good for consumers," he said. "This is a panicky time for the companies, and everybody seems to believe cannabis is a gold mine. Well, it's not. Since reaching a peak price of $14.53 per gram back in July of 2021, the retail dry leaf price of cannabis skidded to $9.81 per gram by March of 2023, a 32.4% drop, according to the Pennsylvania Medical Marijuana Advisory Board. A steeper decline was reported in wholesale prices, which plummeted to a per gram price of $4.09 from a peak of $10.65 in January. Down an eye-watering 62% in 26 months, Pennsylvania has had 898,992 patients and caregivers registered to buy cannabis products for medical conditions, which include anxiety, and 173 dispensaries where the products are sold. Total sales since 2018 and as of March 30th were $7.3 billion. Use of marijuana for medical purposes was approved by Pennsylvania legislature in 2016, and the first dispensary opened 2 years later. Falling cannabis prices have translated into losses for the big multi-state operators that dominate Pennsylvania's legal pot market, and Quincy, Florida-based Trulieve Cannabis Corp., which has 20 dispensaries in Pennsylvania, including ones in Cranberry Township, Squirrel Hill, and Northside, reported a net income loss of $246.1 million on $1.2 billion in revenue for 2022. Steeper losses were reported at Juicy Holdings, which is based in Boca Raton, Florida, and controls about 10% of Pennsylvania's cannabis market. A net loss of $202.3 million on revenue of $284.3 million for 2022. Pennsylvania isn't alone. In the last 2 years, stocks for publicly traded cannabis companies were down 71%, Mr. Sketchin said, and the supply of cannabis products have been outpacing the consumer demand, even though demand has been rising. Juicy Chief Strategy Director Trent Wolviak said, supply has well outstripped the demand increase, he said. I don't see any more supply coming online due to current demand. The upside down market has raised questions about the future of 2 regional cannabis cultivation and processing facilities that were announced with fanfare back in 2021. At that time, product prices were peaking. Trulieve, which touts its product as a way to, in quotes, get ready for this, guys, take your senses on an unforgettable journey. I wonder if that is because they produce so much boof, but nonetheless, spent about $10.3 million to buy 3 buildings, nearly 37 acres in McKenziePort in 2021, with plans to develop a 508,000 square foot cultivation and processing center, more than twice the size of a Walmart superstore. The former U.S. Steel Tube Works once occupied the site, and the company received a $2 million state redevelopment assistance capital grant for the purchases with the promise of 800 new jobs in an economy-stressed municipality. Trulieve did not respond to a request for an update on the McKenziePort project, and in May of 2021, Alaska-based Parallel, which is privately held, announced plans for a 124,000 square foot grow and processing facility on Beaver Avenue in Pittsburgh's Chateau neighborhood, with an anticipated start date of mid-2021. The site had room for a future 36,000 square foot facility expansion. Among Parallel's products are Coral Reefer and Float and Highs. But Parallel's plans to go public in a deal valued at $1.9 billion with Los Angeles-based Cares Acquisition Corp. collapsed in September of 2021, with CEO William Bo Wrigley stepping down. Since then, the company has been dealing with investor lawsuits over financial disclosures and other matters, and Parallel officials did not respond to a request for comment. Oh, man, it seems like the Pennsylvania industry is just evaporating. And in all fairness, they're still getting a decent price on wholesale with over $4 a gram. But what do you guys think? This is Jason Beck.
Man, I think with all that evaporation, it's going to precipitate some mids up in there pretty soon. So, you know.
Well, this shit was already mids.
It's going to precipitate more mids for them.
Did you know anyone that drove to Pennsylvania for their high quality cannabis?
No, but I'm just hoping that they continue just with the booth so that New Jersey can get it popping.
Their adult use isn't even kicked off yet, right?
Nope.
No,
It just
they
got
keep
medical there.
voting it
Oh, yeah.
down. They've actually outlawed like a lot of things. Like you can't do vapes with like other natural terpenes or flavoring. It has to all come from cannabis. If you're doing a vapor, it has to be raw distillate in the vape pen. So that's like Pennsylvania has actually taken some very hard lines on a lot of the regulation, and they've voted down the adult use every single time that's come up. So it's very interesting in Pennsylvania, but we know Pennsylvania is a crazy place.
Mhm.
So it's all corporate and government booth that's being pushed out, and they created too much of that.
Yeah, they have like they even have like distribution centers for alcohol. It's like you can't go to a liquor store. You have to go to like a warehouse and like load up your. It's like weird. I don't know if it's everywhere. Maybe not in like Philly or the cities, but I know my cousin lives in a small city out like north of Pittsburgh, and it was that was the situation. Obviously they have like bars and stuff, but like they just take a really interesting approach to all the regulation for this kind of stuff with alcohol, and with cannabis. So I don't think it's out of the norm for them. It's definitely out of the norm for everyone else. They're way an outlier in all of their government and bureaucratic nonsense.
Yeah.
The one good news is any lessening of cannabis and psychedelic stigmatization in Philadelphia or in Pennsylvania is a good thing, because it's a very repressive state and they're still locking up people for years for psychedelics and cannabis.
I mean, what part of the story told you that's happening out there?
When cannabis is legalized, people are affected by cannabis in positive ways, and family members and friends of those people then have their cannabis attitudes altered. And this is from several studies in multiple different states.
I can see
in
that,
America.
but they haven't voted in adult use yet. It's just you still have to go get a doctor's note. And
Agreed. It has to start somewhere, and medical use is usually the tip of the grappling hook, and recreational is climbing up that rope right after it.
Well, yeah. We are at the top of the hour. It's very interesting out there, and I hope Pennsylvania gets their act together. I'm getting better at this non-cussing thing. I'm still not good at it, but I'm just trying to
practice makes perfect, Rico.
Keep us monetized.
Shucks.
Shout out Nick Bradley. Shout out Nick Bradley, keeping us honest.
Dang, everybody.
We're at the top of the hour, y'all. Thank you all for tuning in with us for yet another episode of High at 9 News. You can always catch us weekdays at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our live audience members and online supporters tuning in and giving us feedback on the daily headlines of chaos, also known as the developing cannabis industry. To our vetted industry correspondent team tuning in from all over the global community, bringing us much needed variety of perspective and adding your respected opinions to the conversation. To our production team, Cloud Media Partners, House of Fuego, wonderful Jaja Simone, who is back like she left something. Big love out to Jaja out there. Good to have you back in our graces, and I'm glad to have you recovering nicely. Send some love her way. And to our haters out there, just keep bringing the heat, man, because it's cold out here in these streets. And I love the warmth, because it just gives my soul such fervence. I swear, man. Just keep on speaking your truth out there, and we're going to keep on speaking ours. Just keep it at that. And finally, Cannabis Sativa L, the reason why we show up every single day to read these headlines. We love you so very much. We're going to keep it rocking just for you. It is Monday, April 17th, 2023. The show is over, and you've been blessed with today's top industry headlines. We hope it was enough to put in your pipe and smoke it at least until tomorrow. Y'all know who it is. Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street, and I'm signing off. I want to give this to Saman Razani. What do we have for the people, man? Give us something to close the day out.
Man. People, have a blessed week. Stay positive and stay happy, and just help each other out. That's all my message is for this week.
Spread love. Oh yeah, and everybody, and for everybody who is missing the women on our show, I know Nicole and Gretchen.
We missed them too.
We missed them so very much, and they're out there at lobby days doing the damn thing, representing our show, representing their own perspectives, and just send them some love, man. Check in for them out in DC. If you guys are out there, make sure you guys send some good vibes their way too.
Peace, guys.
Love y'all.